Hey everyone! Today I want to talk about Some Came Running from 1958 by Vincent Minnelli. This is the 32nd episode of my 1000 Favorite Movie series, where I talk about the movies I love the most in a random order. Movies like this exemplify why the 50s was such a wonderful decade for American movies. By this point, not only did the craft seem to have been perfected, but filmmakers weren't afraid to start experimenting in various ways, formally and thematically, and when put together, these two factors created some truly great movies. This decade saw many masterpieces that were big scale and bold, but there's plenty of room for those that were much smaller scale and low key, that still retained just as much craft, innovation, and sometimes budget as the bigger movies. Vincent Minnelli dabbled in both types of productions, of which Some Came Running qualifies as the latter. It had a pretty big budget, CinemaScope, a famous leading man, and was based on a brand new book by an acclaimed author. But the feeling of this movie is undoubtedly leisurely and personal, while still being just as entertaining as any movie made that decade. Similar to The Man with the Golden Arm, which I've already reviewed as part of the series, Some Came Running also stars Frank Sinatra as he returns to his old stomping grounds, but these movies couldn't be any more different apart from that. He's come back to the fictional town of Parkman, Indiana, his hometown, after being drunk and unknowingly put on a bus. This independent minded character, called Dave Hirsch, has avoided coming back for 16 years, wanting to stay away from his older brother, Frank, played by Arthur Kennedy, and his wife. But now that he has come back, he faces the music and gets back into his life, including forming somewhat of an emotional bond with his now teenage niece. But more importantly, he gets introduced to a family called the Frenches, and he falls in love with the daughter, a teacher called Gwen, played by Martha Heyer. At the same time, while his brother is a major player in the town and represents the higher society, he quickly starts to associate with the more seedy side of town in the bar. He meets a gambler called Bama, played by Dean Martin, and starts to board in his house. He also hangs out with the girl who came with Dave on the same bus called Ginny, played by Shirley MacLaine. With their influence, Dave gets dragged into some less than reputable situations, mostly involving fights, that his brother is very disturbed by when they get in the newspaper and damage his reputation. Also, Ginny makes it clear that she's in love with Dave, so he sort of gets caught in the middle between the two opposite sides of town, the reputable and the disreputable, with two different women included. While it's clear that Dave kind of can't stand the wealthy lifestyle and feels more at home at the bar than the country club, he loves Gwen and not Ginny, so it's a give and take. But wherever Dave is, he's fun to follow due to his independent spirit, how he won't take crap from anybody and always says what he means, which Sinatra pulls off very well. He's also an Army veteran and an author, having written some acclaimed books in his time, so he's clearly smart, talented, and experienced in life, giving what he says and does a further ring of credibility. Besides Dave, my other favorite characters are the two women on either side of town. Firstly, Gwen might be purely the funnest character to listen to, as she's a teacher and literary critic, and she speaks formally 24 hours a day. Maybe it's the world she's in that pressures her to speak like this all the time, but whatever the case, it reflects her emotional repression, not quite being able to give herself over to her love for Dave. The other one is Ginny, who is quite the opposite of Gwen in her status, intellect, but also her heart, which is wide open. She might be the most likable character in the movie, and by the end, there's no doubt. These two women do meet only one time in a memorable scene where Ginny visits Gwen in her workplace, the local high school. She's like a fish out of water in this environment, but she comes to essentially do a very nice thing, basically cede Dave over to Gwen if they're in love. But Gwen, in turn, takes this new discovery of Dave associating with someone like Jenny and uses it to shut him out, ironically contradicting a speech she gave immediately before this encounter about looking past authors' weak points and highlighting their strengths. She's forsaken happiness with Dave because of societal pressures, while Jenny just loves Dave for who he is. Anyway, one of the things I love the most about this movie is the small world that all these characters inhabit. From when he gets off the bus at the beginning and checks into his hotel, everything has sort of a lazy feel to it. The movie itself, but also the world and its people. It's something I can't quite put my finger on, but I just eat this opening 20 minutes or so up. Everything's just kind of quiet and soothing. But on the other hand, the most ridiculous thing about this town is how fast news travels. Firstly, Dave hasn't been to the town in 16 years and came unannounced, yet somehow everybody knows who he is and that he came back, and also who his brother is. Either someone recognized him while he was getting off the bus, even though he hasn't been back in 16 years, or this hotel receptionist cared enough to tell everybody in town in a flash. Even this manager of his brother's bank knows about it, even though Dave's money was deposited in another bank. This absurdity continues throughout, but that's the charm of this movie, and it allows for it to be fast paced and engaging. What also keeps a movie engaging is the direction, including the handling of the cinemascope frame. There aren't too many cuts within individual scenes, with the camera movement and blocking doing most of the work to assure a dynamic shot. This means that a number of times we're left with a widescreen frame to look around in and find different points of interest. Like in this scene, for example, where Dave and Bama are hanging out in the bar on the right side, while on the left side we can see Ginny eating all by herself. Eventually, Dave sees her, which is around the same time that the audience might see her. Minnelli also employs lots of darkness in the right places that make the film feel expressionistic at times, such as the scene where Dave and Ginny leave the bar and we can feel the light on the set coming down. Because of this lighting and framing, I can't help but feel a slight sense of artificiality to the look of the film, which isn't a bad thing at all. It could have easily looked like a play in other directors' hands, but this never does, always staying richly cinematic. Now for my favorite moments, and the first is the moment that comes the closest to feeling like a play, but its very boldness is what I admire. Gwen has just finished reading the current draft of Dave's latest story, and it awakens something inside her. She loves it, and now instantly sees further depths to him that she didn't see before. This is happening while Dave has been trying to seduce her for a while, and here, when the moment reaches its most tense, the lights quickly dim, and they're now shrouded by darkness. This is obviously extremely artificial, as if he were backstage along with the stagehand turning the lights down himself. But I personally love it because it's expressionistic and a wild stylistic swing that sort of further elevates this movie into a personal artistic vision. Next, there's a moment where Dave changes his feelings toward Ginny. He reads her his latest piece that was just published in The Atlantic, and Ginny says that she likes it. He presses her on why she likes it, and she can't give specifics, just that she liked it. He kind of becomes cruel as he keeps persisting that she answer with specifics, complaining, "You don't understand a word I said. You don't understand the story at all." To which she passionately replies, "No, I don't, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. I don't understand you neither, but that don't mean I don't like you. I love you, but I don't understand you. So what's the matter with that?" I won't say that this makes him fall in love with her, but it sort of flicks a switch inside him, maybe to kind of let his guard down and just go with his instinct. But what makes this exchange memorable is the putting into words of the powerful idea that you don't have to understand something to love it, as it applies to art and people. This isn't always easy to do, as we love to rationalize things and try to give everything a reason. But the simple human reaction of liking something is more felt than thought, and feelings are no less important than all the analytical skills in the world. Finally, there's the famous carnival scene at the end, where if you weren't already convinced by the merits of this movie's use of CinemaScope, you will be now. I especially love all the colorful lights and all the darkness, particularly the whirling lights that whiz by from this ride. And of course, this shot, where even in this expansive shot of the street, we can see Dave and Ginny in the pocket of light in the middle of it. But the more powerful moment comes at the end, and here's a spoiler alert for anyone that doesn't want to know, where a creep who follows Ginny all the way from Chicago shoots her after she runs to protect Dave from being shot. The thing that makes this memorable is the music. The scene starts out with a carnival like song as the couple are walking through the fair, but when we see the creep trying to find them, the music becomes a more typical Hollywood suspense piece. But as they get closer to each other, the second song takes over and gets more dramatic when the shooting happens. But when the shooting stops, the music switches back to the carnival piece, and this plays over a close up of Dave realizing that Ginny's dead in his arms. This shot in particular is the most memorable and haunting single shot of the movie for me. But in the end, what I love about Some Came Running is that, on the one hand, it's an entertaining and effective Hollywood drama, with great acting, including by Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, actually making this technically the first Rat Pack movie, and Shirley MacLaine, among others, along with expert production values and great sharp writing, which I barely mentioned here, probably because sharp writing was practically a given in the 50s. But on the other hand, I don't know if I conveyed just how breezily and leisurely this movie plays, making this feel like a small scale, personal piece of movie art despite its resources. It's a long movie at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and this allows you to really enjoy and savor the experience of being a writer caught in a small town. It's one of my 1,000 favorite movies. Thanks for watching my video. Goshoujo makoto ni arigatou gozaimasu. Have you seen Some Came Running? Let me know what you think in the comments. I think of all of my favorite movies as friends, and I think of my audience as friends too. Remember, I upload a new video every Friday, so if you want to help me complete this 1,000 favorite movies epic, don't forget to like and subscribe.